This is Gayle Faulkner, and this is my second video today, my second FaceTime video totally. Evidently, the first one I didn't have sound on. I'm hoping that I have the sound on this time. We'll have to see when I'm finished as to whether or not that has happened. This is the painting that I was working on today, and I went ahead and got the foreground in, and I've got some of the background in. But what I want to do on these Facebook opportunities is to introduce myself. My name is Gayle Faulkner, and I'm going to take you on the journey that made me realize my dream of becoming an artist. I know each and every you has probably had your own dreams, and you probably have said to yourself, I wish I could be, or I wish I could do, and fill in the blank. That could be a lot of different things. As a very young child, I actually thought about being an artist. I remember being about 5 or 6 years old, sitting at a little table and chair set in my grandma's pantry. I was drawing a flower, the same one I drew time after time, and I thought to myself, if I could do anything, I would want to be an artist. In the time that I grew up, art was considered frivolous. It was just something you did in your spare time. I was in the Kansas City, Missouri school district, and we saw an art teacher for about 1/2 hour per month. Not a great way to generate a great art education. I also was a very academic child, and I knew from a very young age that if I wanted to go to college, I would need a scholarship. Therefore, art was never a priority. But I'll talk about more of this story later, and I want to hear about your stories. Today, I'm going to continue to work on this painting that I started this morning. I have got the foreground in, lots of different kinds of flowers in the foreground. As I said before, I'm a master gardener and I love all kinds of flowers, all kinds of beautiful colors. There are many different types of master gardeners. There are those who enjoy wildflowers, like this is a beautiful wildflower meadow, and there are gardeners that enjoy things that are much more tame and much more controlled. And that's one of the great things. There are as many different kinds of gardeners as there are gardens, and that's what's really fun. What I have here, I'm using heavy body acrylics, and I'm going to take some of these acrylic paints and I'm going to put them out on my glass palette, just big globs of paint. I will mix these together as I continue to paint. And since I have this meadow in the foreground and I have, I'm going to pull some big birch trees up high, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put in some branches and different leaf shapes in the top area here. So I'm mixing painting on my palette, and I'm just really going to come in here. I'm just going to put paint around on the canvas. As you can see, I'm not really thinking too much in terms of leaf shapes at this time, although I am getting that general shape of leaves. As I said earlier, that I don't really paint from photographs. I paint from my memory of things that I've seen, moments that I've enjoyed. So I never know for sure what a painting is going to end up being, or what it's going to look like, because I just kind of play the whole time I am painting. I'm using this round palette knife, and it gives me the opportunity to get a lot of these rounded types of shapes that would be in the leaves. Now what you'll notice too is I'm pulling the palette knife back to my canvas. I have lots of different things on the palette knife as far as colors and paint. So as I put these on the palette, or on the canvas, I did better the first time. Too bad you couldn't have heard me do that. I'm going to pull lots of different colors in here. I'm starting with the darks, and I will go ahead and pull some of those lighters in on top of these darks. But for the moment, I'm going to get lots of darks in. I'm mixing some blues into my green, my dark green. My green is a very dark, somewhat transparent green, so you have to get a lot of additional colors mixed in. I also am kind of pushing and pulling my palette knife as I go, being sure I get the sides. These gallery wrapped canvases don't need to be framed, so it's important that the sides be equally involved in what you're doing on the canvas. So I will continue to do this. I'm going to just pull these leaf shapes in. This is not a gigantic canvas, so I probably will change to a little bit smaller knife in a bit. But you'll notice as I put these shapes down how beautiful they are with color variables. Lots of beautiful things happening in all of these different colors. I have the foreground trees going through here, lots of colors in those. I will emulate some of those colors in my upward trees also. Bring some into the center area here. And what I'm doing is I'm creating a picture frame for my valley. So as I continue to do this, I will think in terms of the forest, that's part of the valley, but it also frames the beautiful meadow, the field of flowers, which are very gorgeous. All right, I'm going to switch to a smaller palette knife. I'm also going to grab some additional colors of paint. I'm going to get some more yellow paint. This is the yellow, lemon yellow hue, which is a nice paint. It also is very transparent, so you have to mix something with it. It doesn't stand on its own. I'm going to grab a little more yellow ochre. Yellow ochre is a nice semi-dulled color that allows you to get some light in there without being too bright. So that's always nice. Yellow ochre is kind of a browny yellow. I like that color a lot. It works well no matter what medium you're working in. For years I was a watercolor artist, still love watercolor. A lot of years was playing with that. And I've just kind of gone to these textural acrylics now, which I'm really, really enjoying. All right, I've mixed up some lighter greens on my palette knife. So let's very gently lay those on top of some of the other greens that I put in there that are darker. I want to get that beautiful mix of color, lots of things happening on my palette knife. And as I lay these down, the leaves get a little denser. They also get a little bit lighter. They'll take many layers of this in order to get the paint on there that has enough body to it to really do what you want it to do. Kind of pull those forward. You don't want to get meringue peaks. So as you lay the paint down on the canvas, you're going to kind of lay it down and pull forward rather than lift. If you lift, you get meringue. My grandma made the best lemon meringue pies ever. And as a little girl, I watched her put that meringue on there, and it was just amazing how beautifully she did that every single time with those beautiful peaks that she browned then in the oven. All right, pull some more leaves down here. Let's pull some of these yellowy green leaves over to the other side. So I am really wrapping this canvas in this beautiful forest. I want some of this to go down where the leaves are on these other trees down below. And then also as I'm moving outward, I get some smaller leaves, and that's where my smaller palette knife will come in. All right, I have lots of reds in my foreground. So let's pull some reds up into these leaves also. All right, let's start with a little bit that I have on my palette, pull that around, and then I'm gonna grab some more red. I'm using cadmium red light hue. It's a beautiful kind of orangey red that works really well. Put some of that out on my palette. My palette is a piece of glass, and when I get better at this whole camera and everything else, I can show you that. But for the moment, I'm lucky if I've got the camera and the sound on when it needs to be, so we're not going to worry much about that today. All right, I've got more red now mixed in with my greens. Let's pull more of that on there. Those are gorgeous colors. And they pull some of these reds up from the bottom, which is what we want to do. We want to create that all over circle of color and texture. So this red now that I'm putting in here doesn't have to be a lot, but see how it's connecting that foreground to what's happening up above. Get a fairly good sized dollop of paint on my palette knife. This is really a fun way to paint. It's not as precise as when I was doing watercolors. Watercolors, you have to kind of do things exactly the opposite, but this has been a fun thing. I'm glad I've started this new adventure with this type of painting. Okay, again, I'm continuing to mix colors on my palette and on my knife, pulling those up and around, laying them on there, letting them really. And you'll see I'm getting lots of layers now, lots of fun things happening. As I get down, I'm getting them a little bit smaller. And the thing about this acrylic paint, it sets up fairly rapidly, so I can feel the little bit of tooth under the ones that I'm doing. Got those a little too spotty, so I'm going to go in and add some more greens. Want to make sure that they move about there in a nice manner, that I don't get them so that they are too predictable. You always want these things to be not predictable. All right, I'm going to get a little more lemon yellow. It takes a lot of paint to do this. You'll be amazed at how often I'm going back to my jars of paint and putting more out on my palette. I'm also now going to pick up a smaller round palette knife. This smaller round is nice because I can, if I can find it, it's right here, I can get some little bit smaller leaves. So again, I'm mixing my colors on my palette knife. I'm going to very gently lay down some smaller leaves. Just dollop those down there. And I want those good size relations all throughout this painting. So I will go back in and just get some of these things pretty much all over. All right, we got some nice greens here. Let's go ahead and pull some reds down on top. Get a little bit of yellow in with that. Get a little, that gives you a little of that sunshine brightness, which is great. And the more you mix your colors, the better your colors become. They become less predictable. They become really interesting. As the viewer, you want to kind of look and see what's happening. All right, this is a good start on the leaves themselves. It's a nice connection with what's going on the bottom part of the painting. I'm going to continue to do just a few more. And then I'm going to show you how we do the big trunks of the trees. These are going to have big birch trees in front. And they're kind of a fun process. It takes a while. It takes mine a couple of days to dry. I get the paint on there thick enough. But once that paint's dry, then I can go back in and I can take care of all the little details. Now the leaves aren't totally finished, of course. I will be going back in later and pulling more detail into the leaves as well as into the foreground. But for now, I think this is a nice start. It's kind of fun. So I'm going to put the paint aside. I'm going to clean off my palette knife so that I don't have paint all over everything. And then I'm going to start on a tree. I have a jug of modeling paste, really a fun product. I've used other things like this in trees and all before, just not with this particular brand and not in this particular method, but this works really well. So I've got this modeling paste and I put some black paint in there to kind of tint it so that I can have these trees come out kind of grayish. So I'm going to take a large triangular knife because that works best with the type of tree that I have. I'm going to put some of this on a separate palette because I'm going to be running it through all this wet paint and I really don't want to contaminate my big bucket of paste. So I'm going to mix that up a little bit and let's do a couple of big trees so you can see what that's going to look like. All right, I'm going to take my palette knife, load a lot of this modeling paste on here and think about where I want the tree to come. I'm going to lay it on top of the paint that's already on the canvas. I will at times pick up some of the paint that's on the leaves, but that's not a problem. We have a lot of steps to these big trees on the canvas, so there will be ways to cover that paint that might come on. It takes a lot of modeling paste to do this, but I'm laying it on there. I will go in and finesse it a little bit when I get this tree all the way down. I think I'm going to pull this guy clear off the bottom of the canvas. And see, by doing so, how that increases the scope of what you're looking at as far as the meadow. Suddenly you're inside that meadow. I love the way that tree kind of frames the meadow again. All right, so now let's go in and let's refine this a little bit. I'm going to go in and I'm going to kind of pull my edges in. I want to make sure I have a nice straight edge on the side. So I've got to go in and finesse that. And it's just a matter of practice, a matter of practicing the palette knife and being able to get those trees in there. All right, again, go in, get that edge, pull it across. And after you get this pretty much done, you can always go back in and add a little width if you need to. The main thing is to make sure that your width at the bottom is larger than the width at the top. These trees, aspens and birch, they tend to be kind of gnarly and fun. So we've got all of that great kind of texture that we can play with to get these to look just like we want. Okay, I've already used almost that entire lid full of modeling paste. So I'm going to go in and get myself some more out of the jug. And I just basically layer out a big dollop onto my palette. In this case, the palette is the lid of my modeling paste that I've used the whole container of. So I'm going to continue now, pulling it down and refining that edge as I go. refining the edge, making sure that it's doing what you want it to do. You'll see how I'm just playing. This is like playing with mud. I used to love to make mud pies as a child. I remember getting filthy dirty out in the yard. And my mom would just bring me in and shovel me off and hit the bathtub. And it was just a great part of childhood to get to play in the mud. So who knew that I'd be doing this type of thing now in my life. All right, I'm gonna pull that on down, refine that edge. Then I'm going to go in and I'm going to create some of those shapes that these types of trees have. They tend to have a crossword shape. So I'm going to pull that shape in, pull that shape in. And you'll notice as you do this, you get little holes and all kinds of little fun things happening. And those just add to the character of the tree. So I'm going to go ahead and pull that across, smooth it out. It's kind of a combination of pulling, smoothing, going back and forth, and just getting lots of great things happening on these trees. So let me go ahead and finish this tree, show you what it's going to look like. Hopefully the sound is working this time. If not, I'm going to have to talk to someone who's about 12 or 13 years old, and they'll know exactly how to do it, and go from there. All right, and you'll see I'm just refining that edge. Each time I come back in here, I'm refining that edge a little bit. Here at the bottom, sometimes it helps to lift the canvas. It gets stuck to the easel, but I'm going to lift the canvas a little bit and pull that on across. And I'll just continue to do this. Okay, hopefully the sound worked this time. We'll have to wait and see. If not, we'll try this again. But this is a great start to a kind of a fall scene with a meadow and some beautiful colored leaves. And I will continue to do this. I'm going to tell you more of my story. Hopefully you find that interesting. And I definitely want to hear your stories. Be sure you put things in comments. Let me know what your dream was as a child and how you've gone about to realize that, or if you're still going to do that in the future, because we all have that time to do all kinds of wonderful things. So talk to you later. Bye-bye.